Viewer discretion is advised.
Two Mariners pitchers got busted for doctoring the ball, both in hilarious ways. In 1980, Rick Honeycutt tried using a tack to slash the ball, but like an idiot, managed to cut himself instead. The other was longtime suspected ball greaser Gaylord Perry, who used to load up his hands with more illegal substances than a police evidence locker, and he finally got nabbed at the tail end of his Hall of Fame career. A pitcher who used to touch himself more than Lakers fans when they found out they were getting AD, Perry was caught with Vaseline on the ball in 1983.
What's that shit on your chest? Crisco. Bardol. Veggies.
The Kingdome was opened in 1976 and smartly sheltered both the Mariners and Seahawks from the rain for nearly 24 years. It was imploded in 2000, like the 2001 Mariners, as both teams got new fields respectively, with CenturyLink Field being built and opened on the exact site 2 years later. From an aesthetic standpoint, this is a nice looking field that the Mariners and Padres share, even though it's an incubator for regular season sadness for both teams. Honestly, I'd say this is a major league quality field, as it might have to be because it's been rumored that the stadium may be where the Mariners start their 2020 MLB season due to the outbreak in the Pacific Northwest. T-Mobile in Seattle has a retractable roof which looks amazingly huge in proportion to the seating bowl, and in person the size and scale of the roof truss is breathtaking. At one point when Nintendo owned the place, you could access game features on your DS. Now you can just get overpriced cell phone service. I do like where the park is situated close to the harbor, and when it's not raining you can get stunning evening views of Puget Sound and the city.
October 6, 2001, the Seattle Mariners won their 116th game of the season. They tied the MLB record set by the 1906 Chicago Cubs and broke the AL record of 114 set by the 98 Yankees, a team widely considered one of the greatest in MLB history. And they achieved this mark in the wake of losing three franchise icons. At the 1998 trade deadline, in the midst of a down year, Seattle traded Cy Young Award winner Randy Johnson to the Astros. In return, the Mariners received three important pieces to that 2001 team: shortstop Carlos Guillen, as well as pitchers John Halama and Freddie Garcia, the latter of which would make the 2001 All-Star team. After the 1999 season, Pat Gillick was hired as GM and given the duty of handling the future of Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez, both of whom were on expiring contracts entering 2000. Griffey was flipped to his hometown Cincinnati Reds before the start of the season. The returning package included center fielder Mike Cameron, who would go on to be an All-Star and Gold Glove winner in 2001. A-Rod played the year out, a season in which he helped his team battle the Yankees in the ALCS, but they fell short and he walked in free agency. But as one star walked out, another walked in. Japanese phenom Ichiro Suzuki was headed for the States. In Ichiro's 2001 rookie season, he became the first player in Major League Baseball history to win MVP, Rookie of the Year, Silver Slugger, a Gold Glove, and start in the All-Star Game. An All-Star Game hosted by the city of Seattle, and he appeared alongside 7 other Mariners. This historic team opened the postseason against the Indians and were tested immediately, dropping 2 of the first 3 games in the ALDS. But Freddie Garcia bounced back from a Game 1 loss and, aided by a 3-run 7th inning, forced a Game 5, a game in which Mark McLemore hit a 2-run single in the 2nd inning to gain a lead the Mariners would never relinquish.
Has not hit lefties well all year. How about that? Left field. Cordova trapped it. 2 runs in.
Jamie Moyer, a stone's throw away from his 39th birthday, kept the Indians' bats at bay, and Kazuhiro Sasaki closed a do-or-die win.
Third base, and your winner, Seattle.
Seattle advanced to the ALCS for the 2nd consecutive year. Once again, they faced the Yankees, but this year the team was different. And without spoiling anything, I think everything's going to work out. Up against a Yankees team carrying the hope of a city still reeling in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, the Mariners lost the first 2 games at home. Manager Lou Piniella guaranteed his Mariners would win 2 of the next 3 games in New York to bring the series back home. But no one on this 116-win team ever played another postseason game in Seattle again. In Game 4, the Mariners entered the bottom of the 9th tied at 1. Sasaki, the league's runner-up in saves behind Yankees flamethrower Mariano Rivera, was on the mound. But with 1 out and 1 on, Alfonso Soriano came to the plate.
And deals, swung on, hit high in the air to deep right center field. Back goes Ichiro on the track, at the wall, she's gone! Alfonso Soriano wins the game with a 2-run home run.
Game 5 wasn't even close, as the deflated Mariners tumbled into the offseason. Heading into the 2002 season, the Mariners lost a handful of players, most notably starting pitcher Aaron Seeley, third baseman David Bell, and Mariners legend Jay Buhner, who called it a career after their postseason exit. Seeley, who signed with the Angels, was coming off a stellar year and would be a difficult piece to replace. They set their sights on Giants pitcher Jason Schmidt, who was also coming off a solid 0-1 season. But when Seattle refused to offer anything more than a 3-year deal, he re-signed with the Giants. The Mariners settled for throwing a cheap deal at James Baldwin, a massive downgrade on the mound. Their focus on the bottom line and hesitance to offer anyone a contract longer than 3 years became a theme of the season. As for David Bell, an off-season trade sent him to San Francisco, a move that was made once Seattle pried former All-Star third baseman Jeff Cirillo from Colorado. But the move for Cirillo wasn't solely to upgrade the hot corner. It was in response to a contract impasse with second baseman Brett Boone, who had finished the 2001 season third in MVP voting. Seattle had offered Boone a 3-year, $22 million deal, which Boone deemed insufficient. At the time, the Mariners were owned by Nintendo of America, and Howard Lincoln represented them as CEO of the team. He was a businessman and ran the team as such. In reference to Boone's offer, he said, "We have to operate at a profit, and we have to make decisions with that in mind." And despite revenue numbers hitting $170 million, Lincoln used A-Rod as an example of where his priorities lie, stating, "The Alex Rodriguez case shows us we're prepared to let players go, regardless of how popular they are, if we simply can't put something together that makes business sense." As a fan, that's not what you want to hear, but Boone eventually re-signed for an extra $2 million after failing to find the long-term deal he sought elsewhere. Time for a championship. With Boone on board, Seattle retained their core, including all 8 All-Stars from the 0-1 campaign. According to their reigning AL Manager of the Year, Lou Piniella, they subtly improved. When asked about following up their 116-win season, pitcher Paul Abbott said, "We'll take 95 wins and a world championship." And they looked primed to do just that. They put together a 10-game win streak in April, and in May, Mike Cameron made baseball history by hitting 4 home runs in 1 game. The Mariners were firing on all cylinders.
And that pitch is hit to deep center field. That goes Lofton to the track, to the wall. Cameron has done it. My, oh my!
But as the season went on, it started to become clear that the Mariners needed help to make a late-season push, especially with newcomer Cirillo not living up to expectations and Baldwin being no replacement for Seeley at all. But with the budget in mind, no major deals were made at the deadline. Lincoln was quoted saying, "The goal of the Mariners is not to win a World Series. It is to field a competitive team year after year, to put itself in position to win a World Series, and hope at some point that happens." Let's put that on a t-shirt. Edgar Martinez voiced his frustrations with the lack of moves by ownership, especially while rivals such as Oakland were making deals to set them up for a run at the postseason. But in the words of Howard Lincoln, "I'm in the baseball business, not the feel-good business." Around the deadline, Lou Piniella stopped complaining, reportedly due to a gag order. Despite lineup concerns, the Mariners remained tied or in the lead of their division from mid-April all the way to August 23rd. It was then that Seattle, tied for first with Oakland, entered a matchup with Cleveland. 120 consecutive games on top of their division came to an end in the bottom of the 9th. With James Baldwin on the mound, pitching out of the bullpen, Josh Bard hit a walk-off home run.
And deep to right. Back goes Suzuki at the track, at the wall. Goodbye! Josh Bard
It was Bard's MLB debut, one the Mariners wouldn't forget because they never got back on top. Seattle was eliminated from postseason contention a month later on September 26th, following an Angels win over the Rangers that clinched the wild card for Anaheim. Along with a lack of meaningful deadline moves and disappointing contributions from off-season acquisitions, there was a decline in production from some key members of the 2001 team. Edgar Martinez was 39, and after playing 132 games in 01, he was limited to only 97 in 2002 due to injuries, and a late-season slump saw his average plummet. Paul Abbott, who went 17-4 in 2001, was demoted to the bullpen in April and placed on the DL in May. He finished 2002 with 1 win in 5 starts and an eye-poppingly large ERA. He was released at the end of the season. Freddie Garcia, who led the AL in ERA the year before, added more than a full run to his ERA in 2002. He still, however, made the All-Star team for the second consecutive year. Because the story of the 2002 Mariners is not simply a failure to act or a failure to produce, it's also heavily happenstance. While battling for control of the division in August, their AL West foes in Oakland were busy reeling off MLB's first 20-game win streak since 1935, en route to a 103-win season. Another division rival, the Angels, won 16 of 17 games between late August and mid-September, finishing 99-63, good enough to win half the divisions in the majors, and blowing out the bridge to the postseason behind them as they earned the wildcard spot, leaving Seattle at the river's edge with no life preserver. In the offseason, manager Lou Piniella requested out of the final year of his contract and hitched a ride to Tampa Bay. Hired in his place was former Diamondbacks bench coach and first-time manager Bob Melvin. Again, the Mariners retained their core, and again they were formidable. 2003 was their year. I can feel it. Seattle had led their division for over 100 consecutive games when, on August 22nd, they entered a 4-game series against Boston. The Red Sox at the time were a game behind Oakland for the wild card, as the Yankees proved to be a roadblock in the AL East, and Oakland was knocking on Seattle's door at the top of the AL West. Safe to say this series was an important one. Seattle lost all 4 games and ended up in a 3-way tie with Boston and Oakland. But per tiebreakers, this put Oakland in control of the AL West, Boston in control of the wild card, and Seattle in the bleachers. From that point forward, Seattle was unable to make the late season push their rivals were making. They once again finished 93-69 and once again failed to make the postseason. It was another lost season, but one not without its successes. Seattle finished with the second best team ERA in the AL, behind only Oakland. They did so while becoming the first team in over 30 years to have only 5 starting pitchers all season, a portrait of arm health, even with the 40-year-old Jamie Moyer, who set a franchise win record that season. Ichiro's 212 hits made him the 3rd player in history to get at least 200 hits in each of his first 3 seasons, and he was once again an all-star. But as a team, they fell to 10th in the American League in slugging percentage, and bats not in possession of number 51 went cold, shattering hopes of champagne celebrations in Seattle. As an aging roster continued its slow chug forward in time, the offseason proved costly. I'm starting to lose hope. 2-time All-Star and former closer Kazuhiro Sasaki decided to terminate his contract and remain in Japan with his family. Along with Jeff Nelson, who was traded before the season's end, 2 more arms were out the door. Gold Glove center fielder Mike Cameron signed with the Mets as a free agent, and Carlos Guillen was traded to Detroit, where he'd make his first All-Star game and finish in the top 25 in MVP voting. Seattle opened the 2004 season on a 5-game losing streak, which set the tone for a season steeped in disappointment. Jamie Moyer, who was now 41, finally started to show age. He had a string of 10 straight losses en route to his first losing season since 1994. The ace of that 116-win team, Freddie Garcia, had his first losing season in 2003 and was traded in the middle of the 04 season. At the time, he was sporting a 4-7 record. 3-time Gold Glove winner and pivotal bat in 2001, John Olerud, was designated for assignment in July while the team looked for a trade partner. When none materialized, he was released and signed with the Yankees. The Mariners, coming off back-to-back 93 and 69 seasons, finished 63 and 99, In the words of second baseman Brett Boone, it was the mirror opposite of 2001. They finished last in the AL West, without ever spending a day even tied for the top spot. Mariner all-time great Edgar Martinez, who spent every one of his 18 seasons in Seattle, retired at the end of the year at the age of 41. The only bright spot in 04 was the one constant Seattle could always depend on. On October 1st, Ichiro broke George Sisler's 84-year-old hit record with his 258th hit of the season. He would finish with 262. As the walls crumbled around them, the Mariners looked to the future, but not at the expense of the aging core players that had given the city everything they could. Management may not have spent money when they should have, but they understood the impact the team had on the community, even when the end result on the field was a disappointment. The 2001 Mariners will forever have a place in baseball lore, and the memory of that team will live on, even if no trophy or ring exists to commemorate it.